Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Give a Damn podcast. Today will be a different kind of show, and I'm so excited for you to join in. A few weeks ago, I did a live podcast recording in Nashville, Tennessee at the Bloodwater Mission headquarters with my friend Scott Erickson. He's at Scott the Painter all over social media, scottericksonart.com. He's an amazing artist, but he's also an incredible communicator. We had a conversation about not giving up on yourself, and I think you're going to enjoy it. The content is super relevant for anyone wanting to give a damn, wanting to live a life that is meaningful and one that is in service to other people and other ideas and committed to eradicating different issues around the world. It's a little different in that he does most of the talking. It's a little less conversation and more a monologue from him as he works on some of this material, but we did have a conversation, and we had about 60 people show up, a little over 60 people. Some people came from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. That's 4.5 hours away from Nashville. Others from Chattanooga, 2.5 hours away. It was an amazing evening full of boxed wine and a bunch of friends. It was fantastic. And now you get to join in on the conversation on this podcast. I can't wait for you to hear it because it's super, super relevant content. Before we get into it, though, our friend that night, live, our friend Bradford Loomis performed, sang some tunes for us. He's amazing. And I wanted to share one or two of those songs on this podcast. Here's the deal, though. I'm dumb, and I didn't record the correct way. I ruined it. But I still want you to hear him. I still want you to support him. He's amazing. I want you to get in on what we enjoyed that night. So I'm putting one of his songs, Across the Divide, one of my favorites, right now after this, before the conversation with Scott. So I'm going to let you listen to that. Please enjoy it. And I'm going to give you his social media handle, website, all that after, before we get into the live podcast recording. So don't skip ahead. That would be terrible because you're about to miss some magic. Here is Across the Divide, Bradford Loomis. Here you go.
I can see the valley. I can see the road we used to climb. I can see the mountains leering on the other side. And on and on and on and on it goes. I can hear the echo. I can hear the song we used to sing. I can feel the distance, living in the in-between. And on and on and on and on it goes. And on and on and on and on it goes. All these moments get lost inside my head. Carry on to find strength in your eyes. Every fray we fought, all the things we lost, makes us strong in time as we cross the great divide. Can you hear the rhythm? Can you feel our hearts begin to beat? We're rising from the ashes like a train that's gathering steam. And on and on and on and on it goes. And you can hear fire, we crescendo. All these moments get lost inside my head. Carry on to find strength in your eyes. Every fray we fought, all the things we lost, makes us strong in time as we cross the great divide. Every time we were close to giving up, when the weight of the world was bearing down on us, you kept your hand in mine. All these moments get lost inside my head. Carry on to find strength in your eyes. Every fray we fought, all the things we lost,
amazing, right? Go follow him on social media at Bradford Loomis and check out his website, bradfordloomis.com. That's BradfordLoomis.com. Bradford Loomis. He's amazing. His family, they're very dear to us. They're generous, kind, damn givers. So go support what they're doing. Okay, without further ado, let's get into my live podcast recording with Scott Erickson about not giving up on yourself.
Well, before we get started with what we're going to do, so I had some of you, I didn't have enough questions for everybody. If you got a piece of paper, here's what I want you to do. First of all, do not steal the pens. Those belong to the wonderful people of Bloodwater Mission, so you can leave the pens over on that table when you're done with them for tonight. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to take your question, and I want you to trade it with somebody you don't know, okay? Do that. Oh, yeah, make sure.
Are they supposed to read it yet?
You know, no? It's actually okay if you didn't have a question. We just need to get it around
to someone else.
We're gonna mix it so much that nobody knows.
Should they read the new question yet?
So then trade it again, pass it again. Just keep passing. Let's just keep passing as far as you can go. See if you can keep doing it. Here's the thing. I asked some questions, and I hope you were honest. Some of them asked you to be slightly honest. Some of them asked you to be very deeply honest. And I just don't want anybody to feel the pressure that what their answer is going to be read out loud and they're going to be like, crap, everybody knows that was me. So let's just get it to where it's farther away and we don't know who said what. We just know that it's in the room, okay? Does that make sense? We just want to know that there are secrets in our thoughts and there are things in us that we don't always let out in the open.
And now they are.
Social reasons, but these little small acts of bravery will help us get to that spot. Sound good? Sound good? We'll see if it works. I've never done this before. This is all an experiment.
So thank you for being here. There's a few things happening right now. This is being recorded on the Let's Give a Damn podcast. If you've never heard of it, yes, are you a listener? Okay. That's amazing. I'm so excited about what's happening right now. So Let's Give a Damn podcast is something I started about a year ago where I find people that saw something wrong and gave a damn about it instead of walking by it, which is what most of us end up doing. And I interview them. I talk to them. I've interviewed people that you've never heard of, and I've interviewed Rainn Wilson and everybody in between. It's been a fun experiment. I'm figuring out what it's turning into right now because I don't know, and that's part of what we're talking about tonight is, like, you just don't know sometimes. And so I'm doing it. What was it, 10 days ago? It wasn't that long ago. Like 10 days ago, Scott called up and said he's coming into town.
Yeah.
He's working on this thing.
Yeah.
And he said, would it be a good format? Should we do it together, like on the podcast?
Yeah.
And he started talking about it, and I got so excited. I think I may have cussed once or twice in Frothy Monkey, like just in excitement, like out of excitement.
Out loud of it.
Yes. Because just what we're going to address tonight is something that every person in here, everyone, this is not something that you came and maybe you're going to get something out of it. Really, we don't really know how this is going to go, but regardless of how it goes, you're going to get something out of it because every one of us deals with what? In some stage of our life.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about tonight.
So, if you know a little bit about like comedy, I'm not a comedian, but if you had the chance to go to New York City and you went to the Comedy Cellar on a Monday night and you paid whatever fee, you would think that maybe not a famous comedian would get up there, but actually you'd be pretty surprised. Like somebody like Kevin Hart might get up. And why is he there? He's there to work out his material before he does it to big stages and things like that. This is. That example makes
Who's coming out?
I will never do that.
Kevin Hart is coming out.
I'm not a different Kevin Hart. No, I went through an experience a couple years ago, and I have been inwardly writing this stuff down and working on it. I'm going to present kind of a few ideas, and I have been working it on myself to make sure I'm not bullshitting anybody, like going, does this really work? And in my own despair and emotionalness in life and the journey of an artist, which I don't know if you know this, is not laid out for you. I have been doing these things, and I was telling Nick today, I was like, I'm really apprehensive even just sharing it, because for one, I think we all have these voices in our head, and mine are like, everybody already knows this, and who are you? You're not.
Literally, you got out of the car when we met here.
Yeah, and I was
going.
He's
like, who's gonna? Why
I'm
would
not
they
a
come
guru.
for this?
I'm not gonna lead you in Pilates. You know what I'm saying? Like this isn't self-help. But I here's what I know about creative process is that inspiration haunts you until you finally say yes and you say, okay, I'll do it. And this is my first shyful, frightened but brave attempt on sharing the things I've been haunted for a year. And so I did it. So maybe it's not like a one-man show like I've done, maybe some of you have seen, but it's more like a really decent slideshow with two guys on stage, okay? And there'll be some stories and other things like that. And we're just gonna kind of talk about it and go through it. And you guys, those of you, so when your number comes up, if you have a piece of paper and that's your number, then you will be asked to say that answer out loud. Does that make sense? We'll go through that. Okay. Sound
Let's
good?
do it.
Let's do
Let's
it.
start. Go for it.
Do you sing the jingle for the Let's Give a Damn?
There's no jingle.
Let's give a damn.
No jingle
Let's
yet.
give a damn. Okay.
No
There's
jingle.
no jingle? You should
No,
write
we
it.
just started.
It's Nashville. I'm sure people can write jingles here.
Who wants to write the honest? No, I was literally just listening to Pete Holmes. Anyone listen to Pete Holmes? You Made It Weird.
Yeah.
So You Made It Weird.
Yeah.
He actually has a jingle for his podcast, and I was thinking just yesterday, I need a jingle. So if any of you fine people want to write that jingle,
Bradford could bring his gravelly glory to that. Like, let's give a damn. It'd be good. I'd like it. Okay. Perfect. So I went to college 18 years ago, and
how many?
18. That's when I graduated college 18 years ago. And I lived with a group of guys, 5 guys in a house, and we're all still really good friends, and we're married, and we have some like other people. And so we have this group of people that every year we get together without our kids, and we rent a home in Port Townsend, Washington, and we just make food and tell stories and have a lot of fun together. And always Saturday night we do this thing at dinner where we go, what was your high and low of the year? It's a great way to just kind of go, hey, what's awesome that's going on in your year, and was a difficult thing that you have. And so I actually let's see what some highs and lows. Who has question number 1? Okay, what was the answer? And maybe the question was, what was your best moment? Ooh, hiking a mountain in rural Haiti. That's fantastic. Question number 2, or answer number 2. Woo, that's good.
I don't like Jack, but that's a pretty cool place to listen to Jack Johnson.
Yeah, I'd go with anybody's love to see Jack Johnson. What about number 3? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good
cool.
moment. That's a good
Except for
moment.
the fact that family is in Florida, which...
What's wrong with Florida?
Lots.
Oh, okay.
We're not going to get into that, but the family. Focus on the family.
There's some delightful people from Florida, and the Fountain of Life was there. Okay, yeah, mine was a couple years ago. Was going to Disneyland with my kids, and I know that's really cliche, but my kids are now 7 and 5. But then when they were 6 and 4, like it really is magical. And if you let yourself go, it's a fantastic time. I had so much fun. I had a lot of fun. But then we would get into what was your low of last year. So let's do 4, 5, and 6. What was question 4? You got it. That's wow. Okay, number 5. Yeah. Number 6. Yeah, and those are really difficult things. And I know that all of us in some ways, even if it wasn't losing a loved one or a diagnosis that's really tough, all of us experience some really difficult things in a year. I had my low when this happened. I don't know what happened, but I put my kids to sleep, and then I walked in the kitchen, and I just started weeping. I just started weeping in the kitchen, and our bathroom we used to rent this really weird house, and our bathroom was in the kitchen. And so I walked into the bathroom and closed the door, and I just sat on my toilet and cried for an hour. And my wife came in, and she's like, "Are you okay? Do you want to talk to me about it?" And I was like, all I have are my tears. That's all I have to say right now. I was in a recovery group a while ago, and I remember this moment where this one guy was talking about dealing with his feelings of suicide. And I was sitting next to this older man, George. He was next to me. And George, while this guy's talking about all the things, George just is silently, eyes closed, just going, which is awkward to sit next to. We don't often see quiet crying. That's a good band name. Quiet crying. He's just silently weeping next to me this whole time. And when this gentleman stopped his story, the guy who was kind of leading the group was like, George, do you want to share what's going on with you? And George said something I'll never forget. He goes, I don't know why I'm crying. I just made a promise to myself years ago that whatever needed to come out of me, I'd make space and let it come out. And that's always stuck with me. And so to my wife, I was like, I don't really understand this quite yet, but I just know I need to let it come out. And I think what was happening is that I was reaching this spot emotionally, and I'm an emotional person, but I think there was cognitive, but emotionally, I was reaching this spot which is that who I always wished I was and how I always wished my life would be was meeting the reality of who I was and the reality of what my life was, and it was deeply, deeply disappointing. And that seems that seems lesser in some of the phases of real tragedy, but I think it's actually a common, and if not, all of us go through it sometime, that we have this idea or this expectation, these things that we have these like dreams that come up, right? We have these dreams that we adopt or we have for ourselves, and years later, they don't turn out the way that we thought they would, and it's sad. It's really sad. And dreams is an interesting word, because in the English vocabulary, dreams means lots of different things. Like you're like daydreaming, like you're in a state, or like you're a dreamboat, like. But I think what I looked at the definitions, and the one I think that applies for this is a cherished desire. Is like I had this desire, and then it wasn't coming through. Do you have anything you want to say on that? Just mostly because I wanted to look at my notes.
Well, just to stay in the conversation, I want to share what my low was. Because I think it's very relevant in this. Like the last 2 years have been pretty crazy for my family and I. We spent the last 2 years. We left our home of just south of Seattle, Washington. Spent a year and a half, virtually in a wilderness, not knowing where to go. A year and a half ago, we thought we were moving to Nashville. Didn't like it. Left again.
You're in Nashville right now.
I know.
Okay.
I still don't love. I love the people. The people are amazing. I've never lived in the South. That's the bottom line. Is the South is different. That's not a surprise to anyone. But this whole like year and a half of just like I've never had a desert like that. Like things have I've grown up all over the world. I spent most of my life overseas. Done some really great things. Been great places. And then this like year and a half when I thought I had done so much great stuff. In my life and career, and then like just a year and a half of nothing working. Then in the middle of that, the real low, that wasn't the low. I can get through that, and we're going to talk through some of that tonight. But the real low is finding out that one of my sisters, I have 11 siblings. We're a big family. One of my sisters, one of the younger ones, she tried to kill herself 3 times, and we didn't find out until the 3rd time, and it was the night, like we found out. It was the night of my brother's wedding that she was going to kill herself. And my mom walked in right when she was about to like take way too many pills. And anyway, she's been through like she went to this like house, and these amazing people helped her out, and she's like on her way to recovery. She's an amazing, strong girl. But that was like in the middle of all this like stuff to find out that I was 15 feet from my sister because we were all there for the wedding. I was 15 feet around the corner bedroom from her when she was going to kill herself. Like, it was.
We don't know, right?
Right.
That's unless the person is in a spot to be like, hey, I need help.
Yeah.
Often, a lot of us are in a place of despair.
Yeah.
Or people we know are in despair, and we don't share it.
Yep.
For a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I
just wanted to stay up with everything that's going on. I mean, it was a very impactful time, and gosh.
Yeah. Now I know like we desire things, and I think when we talk about desiring, we use the word desire for like, I really desire this kind of car, like an old Bronco. That'd be amazing. And I don't think necessarily the disappointment in desire is about material things. I think it's more about who you'd hope to become or who you were becoming, right? And we often apply desiring to objects. We put our identity in there. We go, I wish I could have that thing, which really means I was successful. I was making money. I knew who I was in the world. I knew how to make a living with what I love to do. It comes down to a lot of identity thing. And I'm uneducated in this, and this is just my opinion. But I think often, like generationally, we tend to have like other like desires that have shaped us, and that's mostly come from our parents or from our culture. Yeah. So, and I have no evidence for this at all except my own observations. But my parents' generation, I feel like a lot of the desires came, and it was like, I'm gonna look for material things to give me security.
Yeah.
I want the house, I want the cars, I want, like, my parents they're retired, but they're in the rat race with all their friends, like who has a vacation home, how are we going on all these trips, which are good things in themselves. I'm not saying that, but there's this like thing that they feel like they need to feed, and maybe that came from their parents being in the Depression and World War II, going, you don't know if you're going to have food, or you don't know if you're going to survive a war. So there was this kind of like find security in these things. Me, I'm right at the end of Gen X. I think our desires came from an outside source. So if you look at all the movies that were coming out in the 80s and stuff, or late 70s, it was like Star Wars, E.T., Back to the Future. Like what we were looking for was that we weren't looking to things to satisfy us. We were just hoping that there was something outside of our situation that could make our situation better, right? God, would some alien just show up in my backyard so my crappy life with my family could all of a sudden get redeemed? Or I'm working on a moisture farm, and the crazy old man is actually a Jedi, and now I'm in the, it's the hero story. We were looking for something to change our ordinariness. And then those who are younger than me, I guess quote unquote millennials or other people, I think you guys are really screwed because you were told that you were going to be in a band and eventually you're going to end up on stage, right? It was like Hannah Montana, TRL, American Idol. Like, it's amazing. If I look at kids programming now for my little kids, every show is about being in a band. And that's a hard thing, isn't it, Bradford? I'm not in a band, but I know most people I know who are musicians, they don't become Coldplay. You know what I'm saying? They don't become Miley Cyrus.
I think the hard thing is that it's actually possible for some
do. And so we look at that and we're like, why not?
My parents never had like vloggers that could make millions of dollars doing stupid shit with a camera.
Yeah.
We do.
That's my wife right now. Okay.
No. But she's doing awesome stuff. You should follow his wife. Amazing food stuff. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the hard part. I think we have it way worse off in a lot of ways because some of us actually can do that. Start the companies. Like, we have the Mark Zuckerbergs in our generation that played on a computer.
Yeah.
And now, the third wealthiest man. And that sort of thing didn't happen with our parents. So yeah, it's a lot different, a lot harder in a lot of ways.
The possibilities are more open.
So many.
It's like, where do we even start? So I think each of us has a place where we come to this reality check of ourselves, and we're basically asked to give up in some ways. And giving up is on a scale. And I think some of us know either... Okay. Technology. There we go.
There it is.
Oh, we're really getting into it because like the room is like, don't talk about this. Okay.
Is that what it's doing?
That's probably the faith I grew up in would say that. Like we're all I think this voice comes to us, or this thing is like, you should give up. And I have friends who, or people I've seen or I know who that meant suicide. And then I also know people who it means like drinking or drugs, or I just want to binge watch all the time because I don't want to try anymore. You know what I'm saying? And the voice of giving up is very powerful. It's so scary. It's like a big monster that comes into the room and it's like, give up, right? In fact, it helps me to personify emotions, so I try to do this a lot. And so I decided that it's a T-Rex of giving up. Like it's like a Tyrannosaurus Rex that comes in your room, like in Jurassic Park 2, The Lost World, where the T-Rex finally comes to San Diego and is in that backyard and eats that kid's dog. You know what I'm talking about? Side note, that whole movie was like, how do we take the dinosaurs from the island and get them to America so they could run around? And Steven Spielberg is a great director, but come on. There's a whole movie about how the T-Rex is sedated, locked up, and then all of a sudden it breaks free on a ship and it gets to run around. I want to know that story. Anyways. There's this moment where this kid walks in this room and he's like, "Mom, Dad, there's a dinosaur in the back, or there's a monster in my room." And they're like, "No, no, no." And they go in the back, or they go into his room and there's a
he's
T-Rex
chewing on-
eating
he has
his
the
dog.
chain in the dog
yeah,
house,
the dog.
yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Okay. So I imagine this like big foreboding voice, this thing coming to me, and it's like, "I want you to give up." And I've had some really despairing moments about that, and I started taking notes on like, what's the argument for giving up? Like when you, those can be very scary places where you're thinking about giving up. But if you stop a minute and be like, what's the argument that you're saying to me? Maybe we can hit upon it, but I wonder what other people think. Well, who has number 7? You do. Number 8? Number 9? That's a good one. That's a good one. Mine says a lot of things, but I broke it down into kind of three main groups, 3 statements. First one is nothing's going to change. You're gonna have this same shit day.
If you do this, nothing will change. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, some of that, like, or no matter what you do, nothing's gonna change.
Got
There's
it.
no way to change it.
Right.
It's just gonna be this
gonna be
miserable
this
day
way.
every day. To summarize, you suck. It could be like you're not good enough or whatever. You don't have the right nose, whatever
Imposter
it is.
syndrome.
Yeah, imposter syndrome. But just to summarize, you suck. And then dying is relief. And dying doesn't necessarily mean have to be ending your own life, but it could just be like, let that thing die. That will be the relief. Get rid of it. Just don't continue. And I think I had this conversation with a friend of mine, and he's 39, and we were talking about this because what I think is interesting is that about dreams is that we adopt dreams when we're young, right? There's a thing in us, and this is where I would like to move from dreams to desire. I think there's these innate things in us that we are discovering, but we're not quite yet discovered what they are, and so we see it in somebody else. I don't know what the next slide is. Okay, chairs, that's good. So we see it in somebody else, we recognize it, and we're like, I want to be like that. But the thing is like you can never be like that because you can't be them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can have qualities of that, and I think that's what we see, but what happens is we make that other thing our goal, and we don't know what our own inner incarnation is going to look like. And so what dies, what this really painful death is, it's actually a good thing because it's the other thing ending. So that can make room for the thing that's in you to come out. But it won't come out if you don't try to make it happen. I think it's tempting, and I know I've been there too, and I'm not putting judgment on anybody, but it's really tempting to just want to stop there. It's like that thing died. I don't know what to do next. Instead of looking through the ashes and go, well, what was the like thing that I was interested in? Maybe that's.
Are you going to get into how that happens? Because I think that's an important conversation. How do you quiet yourself, remove all the stuff so that you can figure out? Because if we all get caught up in it, I don't think anybody's going to deny it. I do it all the time. Look at what they're doing. Look at what they have.
Yeah.
Like I want a version of that,
Yeah.
but that's not me. And so I'm going to be dissatisfied and I'm not going to accomplish that. I shouldn't accomplish that.
Yeah.
But the real conversation I think or one of the bigger ones is
Yeah.
how do I figure out what I'm supposed to do and be? Because that's the real question, right? Like
Yeah.
getting to that point.
Yes, and for me, we're gonna have to start talking about God, which for some people they're like yay, and for some people they're like lame. So let's do this because I was actually thinking about this because I think often when we talk about God, what some of us get a bad taste in our mouth because they're like, I don't want to go anywhere on Sunday morning. You know what I'm saying? They're like, talk about God means I have to join a club, and I don't want to join a club. And I would like to let's take a step beyond that. So what let's reference Pete Holmes says God is the blanket we put over the thing to help give it shape. That's the word that we give the invisible thing. We put a blanket over it to help give it some shape. So if maybe this would help, and this helps me. Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. So Viktor Frankl was a psychologist in Germany during World War II, and he was Jewish, and he stayed in Germany because his parents were too old to leave, so he stayed with them. So he got caught and put in a concentration camp, and he survived He survived going through the concentration camp. And then 8 years later, he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And in that book, what he's saying, he's like, he observed human suffering. And he said, as a psychologist, here's how people make it. Here's my summation of why people stick with it. And one of the things that he said in there is he said, what we had to try to tell the other prisoners is that you can't ask life, what's the meaning of this? Because life will never ask you that. What you need to do is turn it and go, life is asking you, what do you think the meaning of life is? And you answer that by the way that you live. So life won't answer that question. It's actually asking you. It's saying, I want you to tell me what the meaning of life is. And I would like to say when we talk about God, what if we brought it into that? Where instead of going, God, what's the meaning of all this? He doesn't answer that to us. In fact, I don't know if he ever does. But he turns it back to us and goes, what do you think it is? Who do you think you are? What do you think is all this? And it's causing us to dig deeper in that. That helps me. And if we just said, like, if you want to believe in God, that at least all of existence came from that, and that's what we call God, then existence is saying, what do you think the reason for existence is? What do you think existence is, and stuff like that? So I think so. Kind of trying to open that up a bit. There is a Saint Ignatius, 14th, 15th century, came up with a series. He has a whole thing about desires, and looking at your desires as actually that's the thing that existence has put in you to lead you into your vocation, into your life. And so paying attention to your desires is the way that God or existence is speaking to you. And how do we know that it's a good desire or a bad desire? Well, he would say that takes discernment, and we learn discernment by, you could kind of go this, a good desire is leading me to a place of freedom and fullness and wholeness, and a negative desire is leading me to a place of entrapment and fear and destruction, So we can see that, like I might desire wealth, and some people, wealth can be a very generative and free thing that doesn't hold them, and some people it can be this very like destructive thing that they're always craving. You know what I'm saying? So there's this desire for wealth is maybe a weird one, but it could be more like success or whatever. I think that's helpful to me. That's been helpful for me in discerning the thing. So, yeah, 100%. So I have like those three things that fear has, or giving up, as the T-Rex of giving up, has told me. I've been practicing some pivots to work against that. Should we go through them?
Yeah. Are these? No. Yeah. Let's do it. These are pivots that you practice in the moment. Are these like things that you when the T-Rex says you suck, you answer right away, or are they just more gradual?
Yes, these are things that as I was in kind of this stage of giving up or the sorrow and stuff.
Yeah.
I learned some of these things. I learned snippets of it, and then I've kind of developed my own language to it. And I can give you source material if you'd like afterwards. So nothing's going to change. Question 10. And what was the question for 10? Whoever has 10. Can you read I forgot what the question was.
To the best of your ability, describe the human digestive system.
Oh, wait. Oh, yes. Before we get there, let's talk about nothing.
Wait, for the podcast, to the best of your ability, try to describe the human digestive system.
Sorry, let me back up for a second. So
that one's gonna need some explanation.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, I don't know where I'm at in my notes. Okay. We are in a stage of knowing, right? I think one of the things that happens as you get older is that you just feel like you don't know anything anymore. And like the older you get, you're like, I just don't know anything anymore. And maybe that's some of wisdom, and maybe it's just because we live in an age where there is so much to know. There are 3,000 books published every day. There is 8 days of material published every day on YouTube. The amount of information that's out there is crazy. And I think that sometimes we forget that we actually know a lot compared to the history of the world. One of the things that helps you realize this is when you have children, there's a point where children just ask you about everything. And it's kind of like a test. It's like a knowledge test. And that you have to go through all the things you know. So let's go with that. Name the digestive system.
The bum.
Perfect. Play on words. Yeah, perfect.
In the human body. Then there's the bladder.
Perfect. That was great. Whoever answered that. Just
We
catch
need to
those-
be friends.
Yeah,
I know
that's
that's
great.
supposed to be anonymous, but come find me
That's-
after. We're
that's
gonna
great.
hang.
Do you understand? Like, we all kind of know that, right? We all learn that. At least we have a pretty good understanding of that. There is a time, if we went back to a time in history, we would have been considered wizards. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we have vast knowledge of how things work. And there were points in history, like, they killed people because they're like, the earth is flat. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know so much. We know so much, and then I think that also we also don't know things. Like, we know a lot of information, but we don't know a lot of things about ourselves as well. And one of the things that we are starting to know, and through neuroscience and stuff, is that we are narrative making machines. So our brains are designed and are working in a way that we are constantly making up narratives about what reality is. Like, our brains take in more information than we can ever possibly handle. Like, we would freak out if we could cognitively take in everything it's taking in. So what they do is they synthesize that and they create a narrative. So when you walked into this room, maybe some of you felt fear because you're like, I don't know anybody, I've never been in here before, but nobody looked over in the corner and there was a pack of wolves waiting to attack you, right? Most of us felt safe. We didn't see any giant knives sticking out of the ceiling or a big boulder like Indiana Jones that was going to roll over us. We walked into the room and our brain instantly was like, I'm pretty safe. I don't know these people, but I think I can manage it, right? Our brains make up a narrative. And we especially make up narratives about ourselves and who we are. And we often get to points in our lives where we're like, I can't do this, or I'm not possible. It's not possible for me. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough and stuff. And I would like to say, and here's a great quote by Carl Jung, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. One of the things that we get confronted is that nothing is going to change. And that is a narrative that we've made up, that your mind has made up. And the way to kind of hack that is that unknowing is a doorway to wonder. Wonder is an amazing drive in life, right? I went through a couple years of severe depression. And one of the only times that depression ever really lifted for me is when I would listen to Radiolab. Do you know this podcast? It's a fantastic science podcast, and it talks about, and there's always something interesting to learn. Yeah. And I find myself starting on it and being depressed, and by the end I'd be like, I like living. And I was like, oh, learning takes me out of this. And it's not even just learning, it's that it confronted what I thought I knew. Like, familiarity kills wonder. Do you know what I'm talking about here? This happens in our relationship. This happens in all kinds of aspects of our lives. And like, the moment we just go like, I don't know certain things here, we begin to open ourselves to wonder. Question 11. So, these are questions that was like, we already heard some of them, but I'm sure there's crazy things in this room right now. Like, you might have been like, oh, this room's boring, but I'm sure there's tons of secrets. So I asked a couple questions about secrets. So let's see what's in there. Question 11. Oh, that's a good one. Question 12. Yeah, that's a good one. I was hoping for some juicy details, but you're exactly right. That's what you tell your friend. I'll have to rephrase that one. And then 13.
Yeah, we'll just make a note of that for later.
Tell us what you would tell your friend.
Yeah.
We want details. Number 13. Yeah. Oh, good twist. Oh, that's a good twist.
But no juicy details. You wanted some like Kardashian level drama. That's
I do.
You disappointed us. Anyone want to not anonymously tell us some of your dirt? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that might break what we're doing.
You know
what I'm saying? Like, recently I was in a spot where I was, and I'll admit it was my own church, and I was so completely bored at it. And I just started going, well, what don't I know? Because here's the hack. And when you find yourself in you're bored or you feel like there's no wonder or anything, just start going, what don't I know? And if you I sat in this room and I just started looking at everybody and I was like, I bet there's some really sassy secrets in this room. I bet there's, do you think there's probably some moments of infidelity? Yeah. Think there's probably some people who have criminal records? Yeah. do you think there's some like deep stuff that nobody ever wants to know? I was like, yeah. I was like, oh, this room's very interesting. And I was like, what do I know about the pastors? And I was like, I know them really well. I actually know some stuff going on in their lives that a lot of other people don't know. That is crazy and makes this whole thing very interesting. And then we meet in this old J.C. Penney's building, like really old. It's downtown, and it's weird. And I was like, how many like crazy things have happened in this building? So in 2 minutes of just going, what don't I know? All of a sudden, everything was amazing. Do you see what I'm saying? It's just by not assuming that we know what's going on, all of a sudden, wonder's there. And I think we can apply this.
Let's stop for a second.
Yeah.
So
We got it. Okay.
is this a good place to
Yeah, that's a good
butt
place.
in?
Yeah.
How would you for people? I think everybody's probably in agreement right now.
Yeah.
At the same time, most everyone in here, probably does some version of not pursuing wonder every day. Yeah. It's job, it's go home, eat supper, watch Netflix, whatever, like the same thing. Again, not like it's just normal
We're
stuff.
really ragging on Netflix, which is an amazing invention, and I'm so grateful for it.
Sure. Yeah, no, totally. I guess, yeah. But even with
sponsor us.
Netflix, do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, please. we don't need that. But even on the Netflix spectrum, do we watch this like dumb, stupid show for the third? Like, do we watch The Office for the third time through?
Yeah.
Or do we watch Planet Earth, which is going to it's going to compel us to do something. It's going to compel us toward wonder, toward excitement. You know what I'm saying? Like even in those decisions, like I'm not saying Netflix is bad, but even what we do, even in that moment.
Yeah.
So what would you like for?
It's almost like for me, it's almost like a spiritual practice. So I live in the Northwest, and I'm privy to melancholy because I grew up with Pearl Jam and Nirvana, and like some mornings you wake up and there's no sunshine for weeks.
Just 200 and something days.
Yeah, that's why the werewolves and the vampires live there. And so I remember one morning I just was not excited about getting up. I just was like, I don't even want to do today. And I just said, well, what don't I know about today? Like maybe today's the day that my kids do something amazing. Maybe today's the day that I lose one of them. Maybe today's the day that, my wife and I have a mantra because we're both self-employed creatives, and we're just like, an email and a phone call can change everything, right? So I was like, what don't I know about today? How could I ask for eyes to see, ears to hear what's really going on instead of assuming I know what the day is going to be? And it's just that. Then I think it goes even deeper, and we'll get into some of this later, about applying that to yourself. It's like, what don't I know about myself? One of the fantastic things about being a parent, or the interesting things, is you didn't know the well of love that was in you until that gets cracked when you see your child come out of the birth canal, and you're like, I didn't know I had that all in me, and there are many hidden doors and levels to you that can't be unlocked until you put yourself in places that you never thought you'd be in. And so maybe that's some of it. It's like, maybe I'm not, don't I know? Do I know that I can run a marathon? I did my first Tough Mudder last year, and I wore a shirt that said, "We're not dead yet." Because I remember in the woods, I had just turned 39, and I remember I was all by myself at one point, and I had gotten injured, and I was like wheezing, like, and I'm just covered in mud with a "We're not dead" shirt, and I just said, "Fuck you, 39, I'm doing it."
What place did you finish?
Doesn't
matter. Doesn't even matter.
Success is not an outward destination; it's an inward destination. Tony Robbins. Anyway, so Tony Robbins. So that's helpful hack of just like, what don't I know?
Dude, what don't I know?
I can tell you a pretty, like, maybe actually, why don't I tell you? It fits. But it's like the best story that I've ever heard. I'll tell you that story. So I met this woman, Joan. She's an older woman in Oregon. She's a painter. And we were doing this art fair together, and we were walking out to the parking lot with our stuff. And she told me the story that made me cry in the parking lot when I heard it. So Joan grew up in Tacoma. Actually, she grew up in her dad and she grew up in St. Louis, and then they moved to Tacoma. Her mom died at a really young age. And so because of their economic situation and their dad not really knowing what to do, this started a series of events where Joan had nannies take care of her. And this is in like the 40s, 30s, 40s. And mostly what they could afford were African American nannies. And Joan is a white Irish Catholic, right? And so she's like, I started having these series of, and she's like, my dad's family is like blatantly racist, but because that's all he could afford, I started having these black nannies. And she was like, because they were not our mom, my brother and I were like the worst kids to these nannies because we were just like mad that our mom was gone and we just kind of fought. She's like, then this one nanny came into our life and we loved her. We thought she was amazing and all we wanted to do was be with her. And she's like, so she would take care of us. And she's like, a couple times a week though, she would take us down. This is in Tacoma, Washington. You probably never heard of this about Tacoma. This is crazy. She would take us down to the street and we would stand at this corner and we would wait there, and there's a few other ladies there too. And as soon as a car would pull up and stop, my nanny would go and walk and talk to the person in the car, and then she would look back at us and go up to so-and-so's house and wait there until I come and get you. And we would run up the hill to this woman who was a friend of my nanny who would take care of us the rest of the afternoon. And she was actually taking care of all the other kids to the moms who were down there working on that corner. Do you get what I'm saying? And she's like, this woman was so loving to me, and her love filled a void in me that I needed so badly. Years later, Joan's in medical school. She's in nursing school, and she's at a hospital, and she's like, definitely segregation's going on, civil rights are happening. She's like, most of the orderlies and nurses at the time were African American, and then I'm white, but she's like, I just really resonated with them, and I felt like I just kind of navigated both that stuff. So there was a civil rights march that was going to happen in Tacoma. A bunch of people were going to march through Tacoma, and Joan, when she found out about it, she was in her apartment with three of her friends and her boyfriend, and she was like, it's happening in a few hours, let's go down there. And her friends were like, no, we're not going to go down there. And she's like, no, we should go. And they're like, we're not aligning ourselves with that march. And Joan's like, well, I'm going. And her boyfriend stopped her on the way out and was like, if you go down there, we're no longer together.
Wow.
And Joan's like, fine. And so she left and she went down to this march, and she lived in Tacoma. She didn't know everybody. And then she sees some people that she knew from the hospital. So she started marching with them. And Tacoma's not a big city. It's the city of destiny, if you didn't know that. It's not a big city, but, they started in the outskirts, and it got smaller, and then it was small, and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And soon, and more people kind of gathered around the sides to watch it. She's like, as soon as we started getting more into downtown, all of a sudden there were big crowds on the sidewalks watching us, yelling, and then they began to throw things at us. And she's like, mostly the marching row was like mostly, African American with a few white people speckled in there. And Joan was like, I was so mad. And she's like, what I knew, she's like, she'll say that, she's like, I was there to fight for these people and to fight for their justice, and I was ready to pick up a rock and throw it back at their oppressors. Like, I was ready. She was like, in fact, I remember, she's like, I was a Catholic, but I wasn't really a Catholic, but she's like, I remember praying like, God, just let a rock fall in front of me so I can throw it back. And sure enough, a rock came down and fell in front of her, and she reached down, and she's walking with this woman, a friend of hers, and she reaches down and she goes to like throw the rock back into the crowd, and her friend reaches her arm around her shoulder and with her other hand stops her hand, and she says, no, honey child, we don't throw rocks at our goals. We don't throw rocks at our goals. Wow. And Joan said, like, everything disappeared, and it was just like, they were in a sea of people, and she's like, all it was like me and this woman. And she's like, something in my heart just like broke open. And she's like, that was the first time I had ever really felt true love in my life. And she's like, I would say that's the first time I experienced God. And she's like, it was like I saw two roads in front of me. And it was like, there is this road that you can keep going down, which is, violence against violence, and that is the way to live. Or there's this other road being offered to you, which is forgiveness and love. And Joan said, I wanted to go down this one, and I dropped the rock, and this woman just kept her arm around me, and we just walked. And she's like, that moment changed the rest of my life. That changed the job I had, that changed the work I did for the rest of my life. And I think that story doesn't quite fit exactly in the kind of personal thing, but I think somewhere in there is like, she had a choice to be like, I know this. What don't I know about going here? Yeah. And then going to that place of I don't know changed everything about her and opened up this world of possibility. Because what happens was when you start to ask, what don't I know, is you start looking at the underlying assumptions that are building the foundation of your narrative. And when you can start deconstructing those, all of a sudden it falls apart, and then you're free, or you're open to different narratives, a universe of possibilities, actually. So there's that.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's a good story.
I want to meet her.
She's amazing. She's not dead yet. Okay.
That's good to know.
Where are we at? Okay, let's keep going. So, you suck. Guys, I went and saw who's excited about all the superhero movies that are coming out? Yeah. Woo! A
little bit.
So many superhero movies. And superheroes are amazing because they get really creative, and they're just like us, except more stronger and handsomer, and they have knives coming out of their hands and stuff. But I was reading a book to my kids, and it was an older book. There was like one of the Narnia things, and there was a centaur in it. And I was like, centaur? That's kind of like an old superhero, right? Where they didn't, I guess they weren't creative enough to put cutlery in hands, so they're just like, what's strong? A horse, a man, let's put them together, right? And I was like, but how did they figure that out? And did they really think about the positives and, the pros and cons of being a centaur? So I've thought about it. There's supposed to be a little bit of a delay there. But okay, so number one, horse genitalia. Now, that might be attractive
where this is going.
Yeah, that might be attractive to some people. I can't really see that on the female aspect. I've never heard a woman who's like, I'd like a larger vagina. But definitely there's a narrative in male cultures like bigger's better. So there's that. There's a pro for that. Number two, you get invited to be in parades. Have you ever gone to a parade and been like, how do you get in a parade? If you were a centaur,
you're always in.
You're always in. You're always in a parade. That's a fantastic life right there. Number three, you get a ride in a trailer because you can't fit in a car. You get your own trailer. You're like Lightning McQueen, but as a horse. Okay. Instant Budweiser deal. You literally are the consumer and the Clydesdale at the same time. That's fantastic. So royalties and nationwide and
lots of money,
international
lots of money.
Travel, yeah, lots of commercials, and then fast track to police officer because you're a horseback officer. You can be in New York City. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
New York City, Central Park. You're the centaur cop. It's awesome. That's like a great job. Those are pretty good things.
I like where your head's at with these.
Yeah. So I think there's some cons that we need to discuss though about being a centaur. And one, everyone wants to ride you. Now that sounds not that bad, but imagine you're out at a bar and it gets later on, and people see you and they're, hey, man, let me get on you. No, I want to ride you. That's fun for like 2 minutes, and then it's old for the rest of your life. You know what I'm saying? You with me?
Well, I'm with you. I don't know what you're saying.
I mean, there could be some cool moments, but everybody wants to ride you. That would get old. As my mom would say, embarrassing public BMs, bowel movements. So being in parades.
Your mom really says BM?
Yeah, she's a nurse. So BMs. You're in parades, but have you ever seen a horse at a parade and they stop and that tail goes up and we all have to watch it? I mean, we've all had like soiling ourselves in public stories, but that's the worst. And people know because your tail goes up. Okay, having to ride in a trailer. You can't ride shotgun. You got to ride in the back. That'd get old. All by yourself. When hiking, you're the mule. Imagine this. You're on a long hike. Somebody's like, this pack's so hard. Hey.
They start piling on top of you.
They start piling on top of you. All of a sudden, you're a pack mule. Yeah, hiking. You'll hate the outdoors. And then number 5, shopping for clothes. Because do you wear clothes or not? There's actually a really great meme, which is like this. How would a centaur wear pants? Is it straight across? Is it the back? Is it the front? Is it the whole thing? I think there's an untouched industry if centaurs start parking up. But
so which one is it?
It's up to you to decide. I think the whole thing about like superheroes and all this stuff though is that like we're in this conversation like we could be better. We could be better. We're not good as we are, and if we could get some different powers or strengths or additions, we would be more satisfied with ourselves. And this really it's hard because as you were saying before, like we all kind of start at the same playing field, maybe in elementary school and stuff like that. But as we get older and older and older, like some of our peers really make it, and some of our peers won the genetic lottery and get a lot of great things because they look a certain way, and some of us come from better places than others, and it leads us down to a place of like comparison. And I am a consummate comparator, and comparator. I'm gonna say comparator, and that can be really devastating. In fact, because we'll compare ourselves to people that we should never compare ourselves to. We'll find like the most like random reasons why we'll compare ourselves. This happened to me when I met, let's do this. Well, I'll just keep with it. This happened to me when I met Kanye West. So I got a backstage pass to the Sasquatch Festival, and I was just back there for free beer. And Kanye came by, and I was like, "Hey, can I get a picture?" We're not buddies, but I was like, he was like, "Yeah, man, let's do it." So, and then I found out that Kanye and I are the same age, and for no real reason except numbers, I started going secretly, inwardly, like, what's Kanye doing and what am I doing? So, Kanye is big on fashion, and he's got his own clothing lines and stuff like that. This is probably like the best I've ever looked in my life. Fourth grade, those pants are awesome. Kanye rocks out, he's a performer. He rocks out stadiums all the time and stuff like that. I'm trying to be a performer, and here's like the 6 people that showed up to my one-man show in Minnesota. It was a really great show.
Really, 6 people?
6 people. And, Kanye's, making headlines. He's affecting culture. He's on TV all the time. And I've been on TV once, and it's when I won The Price is Right, which was pretty awesome. So I might...
That's pretty awesome.
I might beat Kanye on that. But it's ridiculous. But I will...
We do it all the time.
We'll do it all the time. I will pick for some arbitrary reason, and I will compare myself to that person. Age, looks, I think I should be there. I think I should be that. And it's devastating. Let's go back to these questions. And these are heavy ones, so we'll see how this goes with question 17. Guys, we're trying all this out. I've never done this before, so it could just be the worst thing ever or the best thing ever. 18. Oh, back section. 19. 20. 21. That's good. I mean, not
Those
great.
are heavy.
Those are heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, comparison. It's awful. And especially when the voice of giving up says you suck, it's easy to go to. This is a famous painting about Peter and John, the disciple, when they find out that Jesus has resurrected, and they're running to the tomb. And this is out of my own faith tradition, but I think it's an interesting example, is that, so when Peter gets called, and there's not time to go through all this Bible verse by Bible verse, but if you look, he actually meets Jesus a few times before he follows him. So he meets him for the first time, and Jesus is like, his name is Simon. He's like, actually, your name's Peter, which is a weird interaction. And then there's another time where him and his brother Andrew they're fishermen, so they're mending their nets, and Jesus is like, come and follow us. And it says they left their nets and followed him. And then they go to Peter's mother-in-law's house, so he's married, and he heals his mother-in-law, which he was like, thanks, Jesus. And then all these miracles happen and all this stuff. And then he's back fishing, and Jesus is teaching on the shore. He gets in his boat, goes out, and they teach for a bit, and then he's like, hey, drop your nets in the water, pull it up, a miracle happens. Peter's like, go away from me, I'm a sinner. And because probably he feels that way because he keeps not following, right? And then he ends up following, says he leaves everything, and then they have this kind of, it's all in there. You can read it for yourself. And then at the end, Jesus resurrects. Where is Peter? He's back fishing, and Jesus goes to the beach. Another miracle happens. Then they have this conversation about, do you love me more than these? Feed my sheep, this whole thing. And then it says, like, when they're walking, Peter looks back at John, who John wrote the book where this happens, and John would call him the disciple that Jesus loves, which I always thought was really douchey. If you write your own book and be like, and by the way, I was the one that Jesus loved. And you never say like, and me, he just goes, and the one that Jesus loved. But Peter looks back at John after they've had this really intense conversation. And he's like, yeah, but what about him? And Jesus goes, what about him? You follow me. It took me a long time to realize that you could be a follower of good news and constantly be like, what about them?
Yep.
And you could also be a follower of good news and go, oh, I get it. I'm loved. I'm the beloved. I'm the one Jesus loves. You know what I'm saying? You can have a spiritual practice that still lets you go constantly. What about them? What about them? You must love them more. You must love them more. Or you can work on it and realize, oh, the message is that I'm the loved one. And I think that there has to be, for me, what's been happening in this season is that I think you have to receive the gift of yourself. And I know that sounds like a gift book at the mall, but I don't think you can really experience the love of existence if you secretly hate who you are and who you were made to be the entire time. And I don't think you can really give love to others if you haven't received that first. And I think that's why in the tradition I grew up in, that the greatest commandment, at least that Jesus gives, is love God and love your neighbor as yourself. I never learned that I needed to know how to love myself at some point. That I couldn't receive God's love because I would just be like, hey, you love me, but you made me a piece of crap. You know what I'm saying? That was like the inner song that I discovered. Was it really in me? Was that I didn't want to receive who I was. I wanted to receive whoever else I was looking at. I wanted to be them. I didn't want to be me. And I had to start going, this is the gift that you received me. Because look, we're not getting out of this. You're not getting out of you. I know that's a simple statement, but there's no planet somewhere where large blue people can do a chant and your consciousness can go into another body. That's an Avatar reference. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not getting out of this until the doorway of death. And you can spend your whole time fighting it and bemoaning it, or start practicing loving it and receive the gift of it and find that God is right in there and what you're looking for. So how do we do that? How do we practice that? Well, we got to move from comparison to contribution. And instead of like looking about what I'm not good at or what they're doing, go, well, what can I do? Like, say you want to become a writer one day, and I want to make a video of this, but I haven't done it yet. When you want to write a book one day, well, what's the book you would write? I live in Portland. There's a huge bookstore called Powell's. It's fantastic.
I love Powell's.
You could make up your own book, sneak into Powell's, and stick it in somewhere and be like, I'm in a bookstore. Because when I go to Powell's, because I'm trying to be an author in some ways, I'm like, look at all these amazing people. I suck, you know, because I'm not in Powell's. But I could make something and put it in there and be like, at least I'm trying. And maybe that would be the thing to be like, oh, I did it once. What if I tried it a second time? You know, people who write books like go through like 12 edits on their book. It's not an easy thing. It's a process of learning and getting better. I think also, it's not even just about achievement, but I think it comes down to how do you start loving your existence? And I think one of the things you can do is start going, what do you love? And make lists about that. Because loving is paying attention, and it's giving attention to what you see. And not just what you love. Look, I love pizza. Like, why do you love pizza? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I love pizza because it makes me feel like I'm back as a little kid with my parents going to a round table. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's that movie. It's what the whole movie Ratatouille is about, where he eats it and he goes back to his childhood. I love pizza because it reminds me of my childhood, and it makes me feel loved. So what are the things that you love? 22. 23.
Pizza.
Two for two for pizza. 24. Yes. 25. Yes. 26. And the BLT. I love art. I love paintings. I love that paintings are an artifact of people's lives in the world, that they took elements of the earth and elements of their interior conversations and melded them together into something that is before you. I love PM Dawn's song Set Adrift. I love how it makes me feel. I want to play it right now. It reminds me of one of my favorite crushes in junior high, and crushes are painfully wonderful. I love rolled up socks. I love half a cheese loaf in a Ziploc plastic bag, which is an image I've seen my entire life. I love graffiti. I love hiccups. I love the smell of low tide. I love a good put down from a friend. It's evidence they've been paying attention. I love how I see my daughter, that when she was newly born, I heard the voice of the universe tell me that she was a gift to the world. No one else heard it, but I did, and I have that secret. I love how much I have I love crying while laughing. I love how it feels in my body after a run. I love the inner haunting conversation that inspiration brings to me. I have more ideas than I can ever make, and it gives me hope that creativity is endless and joy and wonder must be eternal then too. I love how much doubt and nerves I felt when getting married, and that I'm so glad I did. And on and on and on and on. If you just make, what do you love? And not what do you just love, but why do you love it? What do you notice about the world? What do you notice about your life? And when we start practicing that, like that's receiving the gift of our existence. And that's how we can contribute. And I think that informs the great art or work or businesses or entrepreneur or lives that we see in people, is that they loved something and that emanated out into their work.
This is why I wanted to have you on. I mean, honestly, because...
Is that true? I've been thinking about this all by myself.
No, it's very, very true.
Okay.
I mean, every day I interact with people. They've listened to the podcast. There's people I interact with all over as I travel, all over Nashville, all over the world as I travel. People that have they have these dreams, right? They have they have these dreams, things they want to do, and they've given up on them because it's the whole thing we've just talked about.
Yeah.
And it has been a long, if you were to ask them that question, it's been so long since they've thought about those things, since they've thought about what they can actually contribute to the world. They spend so much time thinking about what it could be and how inadequate they are to make that happen, that they don't just do it. They don't just get to work. They don't figure out what they give a damn about. They don't figure out what their goals and their dreams are.
Yeah.
And they just settle for mediocrity. They settle for Netflix. They settle for repeating things over and over again. They settle for just the job, the thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Marcus Aurelius wastes no time talking about what a good man is. Just be one. Like just start doing it. And that's what I'm always. This platform, Let's Give a Damn. I always tell people when they say, "What do you do it for?" I feel like my calling is to take people's excuses away. That's why I'm doing it. People make excuses. We spend all day. I do it. Make excuses for why we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And I feel like one of my jobs is to empathetically snatch it away from them and tell them to just get going.
Yeah.
And this has been hugely helpful.
I love it. You've been an amazing audience. And I have just one more thing I want to say. If you need to go pee or get some more wine or do whatever, we'll kind of go through this and end up, because we've been going for over an hour. Is that cool?
Yeah, just go for it.
Here's where we're going. Dying is relief. So not necessarily like physical dying, although like that comes up when you're wanting to give up. We'll skip those questions. So guys, Jesus is going to return in 3016. Don't ask me how I know. I just know. So it turns out that it's a lot farther away than some of us thought, at least the tradition I grew up in. So there's a lot of things there's a lot of problems ahead of us in order to make it as a human race till 3016. We have an ever-growing economic distance between the rich and the poor. We've got global warming and pollution and these extinction of animals. We've got in Washington State, we have like nuclear waste that we have no idea what to do with, and people are now getting radiation and stuff. We have wars and famines. We have a lot of things to solve. Yeah. The good news is, so we have all these obstacles that are in front of us. The good news is that none of it's true except for all the obstacles. And you know what? I grew up in a certain system and narrative that said something that, like, probably in my lifetime Jesus was going to come back, and it did a couple things to me that unconsciously that I didn't really uncover until a few years ago, and it did a couple things. Two of which are this. One is it said to me that like I never imagined the world 200 years from now, because I didn't have to. I didn't, and even if I did, Jesus was a giant cosmic janitor. If there was all problems, he was going to sweep it up and make it glossy again, and so I never had to think about it. And really, getting older and having kids started making me think about it. And then two, because what we have to do. to get him to come back is we got to, for him, it's like a formula. We got to get that, temple built and get this clean heifer. There's all these diagrams. People who love talking about this, they have these amazing diagrams, all this stuff. And if we can do all this stuff, it'll unlock the cosmic.
He's waiting for us.
He's waiting for us. It'll unlock the trap door and he'll have to come back and do all these things. And so the other thing, it made me never realize that I'd never think about that I was going to have to die. And look, I know I'm middle of the age and I'm an artist and I wear mostly black. So I think about dying a lot, but this is the narrative I thought. I never thought I'd actually have to die. I'd just get pretty old and then like, and I'd like float in the air and be like, yay! And I never had to consider those things. And I think it's, I've thought about it and I've had some experiences where I almost died and I've had some friends die. And I was like, what started happening to me over these last few years is it's like, whatever happens after this, I'm not in control of. And really all of this talk about it is trying to be in control of something that we're not in control of. And trying to appease this fear that we have of like that we're not in control of. And people have adopted these, and I'm not condemning them because I was one of them, but people have adopted these things that they are making policies in the world based upon an idea that they're not in control of and nobody knows about. We don't know what's after it. I have a hope and a belief in something. I do. I think I've seen babies come into the world, and babies have personalities. And for me, that's evidence that we come from another place with something. We're not like formed. You just have to, I want you to be happy. And it's like making out of Play-Doh. We come being a certain way. But you know what we do know happens at the end of life? We don't know what happens when you die, but we know what happens right before you die. And that's regret. There's a really famous blog post written by this woman named Bronnie Ware. And she was a hospice care nurse for 9 years, assisted many, many people to die. And she wrote this blog post called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she said, when people die, they all say the same things. And I have friends who are hospice care workers, and they say, yeah, it's totally true. We all say the same stuff when we're about to die. And these are the top 5 things. Number 5, I wish I had let myself be happier. She said that people would just be like, I never let myself just be free to just like enjoy life and what I was doing. I wish I would have let myself be happier. I don't know. See, the room doesn't want us to talk about this. There we go. When you call it out, then it has to come back. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. The people that said, our life got so busy and I was so wrapped up in all these achievements, success and, families and work, and I got to do my garden, all this stuff that I lost touch. It just was hard to keep in touch with people. But what I really missed at the end of my life was like people that I loved and I was friends with. And I really longed for deep friendships. Number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. People said I had gone through all of these crazy things and I never talked about it. I never shared it. And now I'm at the end of my life and I just have a bag of things that I wish I was freed from. I wish I had had the courage to express how I felt about this world and my life. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. This was mostly from men who were dying. Probably because culturally, mostly men were the breadwinners during this time. But she said mostly men said, I missed my kids growing up. I never invested in my marriage. I spent so much time trying to achieve and be successful. And I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I would have paid attention to those things. And the number one thing that people say, according to Bronnie Ware, the number one thing people say when they're going to die is, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. What we say at the end is, I wish I was my full self. I wish I had just been my honest self. I wish I would have showed up as myself.
We get to change that though, right?
Yes. I think, there's debate about we should put the 10 Commandments or whatever on courthouse walls. I think we should put this up everywhere. Hey, by the way, at the end, this is what we say. So when I discovered this, I was like, well, do I have to wait till then? Could I start doing that now? What does it mean to I tell my wife, and we're both entrepreneurs, and I'll be like, babe, what's the reason of working so hard if I can't freaking take a walk in the afternoon every now and then? Like, I love walks. I just want to go on a walk in the woods. Like, what's the reason for it all? Like, it has, and I know that's a specific kind of personality, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to enjoy existence. I want to enjoy being me. And so for me, I think we have to have a conversation with our eventual disappearance. I remember 2 more stories. I remember my best friend's dad died really awfully, and I was at his funeral, and my friend had to give a talk. What's the word? He had to talk about his dad, and it was complicated. And his talk was very complicated. Like, this wasn't easy, but I still loved him and stuff like that. And I remember sitting there, and his dad had been very successful, and all the stuff. And I remember sitting there going, if my son has to give and say this, I'm probably not going to leave any money to him because I'm an artist, so that won't happen. But I am going to leave him an idea of what life is. And I was at this time where I'd just been laid off from my job, and I was trying to be an artist full-time again. And I was like, what is he going to say to me when he grows up and he's like 24 and like, Dad, I got this dream. I know it's crazy and I don't know the road ahead of me. What do you think I should do? Be like, I don't know. I gave up because I had you and I wanted to be secure. You know what I'm saying? I gave up on my dreams because I was scared. I was like, I'm answering that conversation right now. Yeah. The best thing I can do for my son is say yes to the road ahead of me and say yes to this life. And so I guess the whole thing, if I had to sum up tonight, is just start saying yes. Yes to you. Yes to the unknown. Yes to your pain. Yes to your shitty situation. Yes to the joy. Yes to the friends. Yes to the loneliness. All of it is our teacher. All of it is leading us somewhere. All of it is teaching us how to be more alive, and say yes to it. Because when we say no and I'm looking at something else, I miss out on life. I miss out on God. I miss out on everything. So say yes. And just to finish, what I cried about on that toilet was this. At 38, I figured out what kind of artist I wanted to be. I had been like a painter for a long time. My name's Scott the Painter on Instagram, and my wife was like, I think you labeled yourself a painter, but you're actually a lot more. And I stepped back and I said, why do I make art? And I realized what I wanted most of all was to create moments of solidarity with a literal audience. And I didn't want the conversation to be just images on a wall, but I wanted to be with people. And the inner voice of giving up, the T-Rex of giving up said, nobody gives a shit about a 38-year-old trying to start becoming a performer. And I was like, that's a good point. But is that true? And so I started putting this together because I didn't know if I could do it. I'm full of inadequacy, but I can't get out of myself, and this is all that I have. And I'm going to die one day, and I don't want to regret that I didn't try. Is it interesting? That's up to the audience. But at least I know that I'm saying yes to it. And so that's what I've been stewing with for like a year, and this is the first time I've ever shared it. So thanks for being so nice and listening and allowing me to have a conversation about it. It helped me kind of talk it out loud.
Was it helpful?
Okay.
I have a last question.
Last question.
I always end all this podcast didn't go like most of them go, and I wanted it that way. Usually It's more of a conversation.
Yeah. And
you led super well, and this is like super good stuff. Like everybody here and it's going to listen, it's going to be super helped. The last question I always ask, though, and it's right in line with it, because I think about death and legacy all the time. Like, I think about death every day, and I think we should, because it informs all the decisions we make, right?
Yeah, I mean...
I think so.
Put on some Morrissey and stuff if you're really feeling low. But
well, no, what I'm talking...
I get what you're saying. Like, it helps to go like, what if today's the last day? What would I do today?
Yeah, the ancient Latin memento mori. Like, remember death. Like, remember we're going to die. When you remember that changes what you do, what you eat, how you love your loved ones, all that stuff, right? And
really quick, side note. If you want to practice this in not like a really creepy way, when you're by yourself, just in your room, lay down like you're in a coffin. And just imagine, my spiritual director does this, and he taught me, he's like, imagine you're in your own coffin, and just think about your life and what's important. It's a really good realigner when you're thinking about all the stuff you want to do.
Let's do it right now.
No, everybody get down. No, so anyway.
Last question.
I just wanted to give that up.
Hypothetic, you're going to die someday, right? But hypothetically, I'm giving your eulogy, the eulogy you talked about your friend and his. On that day, in front of all the people that you have influenced and your family and your friends, everybody's there, all the people that love you the most.
Yeah.
And I get to give you your eulogy. What do you hope in a few sentences that I'll say on that day about you?
Oh, that's tough. Do people respond the same way I do? Are they like,
yeah, pretty grimacy sometimes, but yeah.
I would want them to say like,
Not them, me.
you. I would want you to say like, he felt all the feels and he still laughed. That's what I want you to say.
You want to keep it super simple.
I want to keep it super simple.
Okay.
Just like, yeah, it was honest and he got sad, but he still laughed about it and he was a hoot to be around.
Perfect.
That's mostly what I want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you.
Well, let's thank Scott for helping us out tonight.
Thank you. It means the world to come out, for you guys to come out and give some time and some money. I want to let you know that 100% of your proceeds goes to help the space and for the wine and to pay for preschool. So thank you so much. That's really helpful.
And so Bradford's still
Bradford's still back there?
Bradford's still back here. Bradford's still back here. He's got some albums. Sign up for his email list. He does live streams every week on his Facebook. Like, just follow
cool.
Bradford everywhere on social media. It's fun, and he's a great artist. And his wife gets on there. It's fun. Scott, what are you on all the socials? Where should people go find you?
Scott the Painter, because there's a lot of Scott Ericksons in the United States. And and
you've got some stuff back here as well.
I've got some art,
some really good stuff,
books and things like that. And there's more wine, so take some glugs. Oh, can you open container here? No, don't take it in your car.
No, don't.
Anyways,
this is no. And yeah, I would love for you to. So let's give a damn. We've got like 50 episodes out so far. There's a bunch of other ones that I would love for you to listen to. Follow us online. Let's Give a Damn everywhere. I'm Nick Lepar everywhere. Love to keep up with you that way.
And thank you for giving a damn. I appreciate it.
I try. Okay. You're welcome.
Great.
Thanks. And I have a few mugs and some notebooks back there if you want to partake of that as well. All of that. All three of us are dads, and we all have bills to pay, right?
It took away the mystery, the sexy mystery of being an artist.
No, the bills still come. Okay, thank you so much for being here. Friends, I hope you found that conversation as helpful as I did. So many truth bombs in there. The people that were there truly enjoyed it. There were some breakthroughs. People contacted us after they left the live podcast, telling us about how meaningful it was to them and different breakthroughs that they had, different things they were going to change in their lives. So I hope that it was as meaningful for you as it was for them and as it is for me. Again, thanks for joining me. You can find links, resources, show notes for this conversation and all the others, shownotes.letsgiveadamn.com. You can also find other ways to join in on what we're doing by going to letsgiveadamn.com or shownotes.letsgiveadamn.com. Thanks to Bloodwater Mission for hosting us. Again, thanks to Scott for joining us in Nashville for that evening. It was fantastic. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, this podcast was edited and mixed by the best in the game, Chad Snavely. Friends, thanks for joining me. See you next week.